Bettas are okay to be kept in cups. A lot of people don't believe this, and I understand why, but they definitely can be kept in cups. I'm going to talk a little bit today about multiple ways to take care of Bettas and how to properly do it, because you can keep your Betta in a cup, but there's a lot of cons to it to do it properly. So obviously, starting off first, keeping your Betta fish in a cup, a lot of people consider it a big no-no, because they're like, oh, the water quality is too low, it's too small of a space for your fish, and that it's such a small space. Like, how would you like to live in like a closet? Which, for one, animals don't think that way. We're giving animals human emotions when we do stuff like that, which helps us bond with our pets, but in reality, animals don't think that way. With keeping a Betta fish in a cup, it is definitely doable. The problem is it's a lot more work. For one, you need to be doing water changes, and like 50 to 80% water changes, like almost every day. I would say a minimum of 3 to 4 times a week, but probably best every single day. Which, now that water change, instead of it being like on a 10-gallon tank where it's like you should be doing 2 to 5 gallons of water change, it's like, okay, like I do a water change of a cup of water. With that, when you're doing the water change, you're going to want to make sure that you're matching pH, you're wanting to match the heat, you're wanting to match all the conditions for your water parameters to your previous one, because there's so little water volume that when you do a water change like that, if you don't do it properly, you can stress out your fish. Secondly, with that, everybody's like, hey, like, your fish aren't happy. Like I said, we assign a lot of human emotions to animals. If you're taking care of your Betta fish right, I've had more of my Betta fishes blow bubbles for a bubble nest in a cup or 2 of water than I have with my Bettas that are in a 10-gallon tank. With that, it is definitely doable, but it does take a lot more work. You're going to make sure that when you're feeding them, that you are giving them the exact amount of food that they're going to need to eat. Betta fish are easily overfed, for one, but if they don't eat any of their food in such a small container, it can foul up your water really easy. So you're going to want to make sure that you feed them exactly the right amount. So just note, yes, you can keep a Betta fish in a cup, but it's a lot more work that way. Next, another one that a lot of people don't like is keeping Betta fish in a jar, vase, something that's not a traditional fish tank that is only a few gallons at most. My mom has a beautiful vase that she keeps in her kitchen that has Betta fish in it. That fish is super healthy and happy. My dad's an avid fish keeper as well, and so obviously this fish is in good hands. My mom takes care of her fish really well. Now, some things that she's done to make this work is, Betta fish do need warmer water. They can't be in just cold water, but in most people's homes, they keep it above 70 degrees year-round. So Betta fish, especially ones that are bred in captivity, the highly commercialized ones, can live in a very wide variety of conditions for their home, for their living conditions. They can wide variety of heat, wide variety of pH, can handle ammonia really well. There's a lot of things that they can get through. So with that, having a heater isn't exactly perfectly necessary. Same thing with a cup. Obviously, it's not big enough to have a heater in there, but most people's homes have their heat or air conditioner on well enough to keep it into the parameters that they need. Secondly, a lot of people don't say, like, oh, hey, like, there's no filter. Obviously, if you don't have a filter, you're going to need to do more water changes to make sure that you're managing that ammonia cycle. One thing that my mom does to help with it is she has a lily plant in there, so it absorbs all those nitrates and ammonia up and makes it so that she doesn't have to do as many water changes. It absorbs all those bad things in the water. With that, also another con, just like with the cup version, When you do a water change, because it is a smaller amount of water, you're going to want to make sure that you're matching the pH, the temperature, really well, so that you're not stressing out your fish in that aspect. Now, with the vase or the jar that's just in a really small area, looks really pretty. Animals, your betta fish is great. You can observe it all the time, which I feel like a lot of people don't observe their fish well enough to know when they're sick. So they're in a public area, it's really easy to notice something like that. So with that, keeping them in a small container without a heater or without a filter, definitely doable, definitely okay. But just like with a cup, there are some drawbacks. You do have to be careful with your water changes. You'll need to add a plant or something to help with the ammonia, or do lots of water changes with that. The last one is what a lot of the fish advocates would vote for with your betta fish: 5-gallon plus tank that they can live in, lots of decorations like plants, filter, heater, all those things that you would put in most fish tanks. Their argument is that they're meeting all of their needs, which I talked about in other types of ways of keeping your betta fish can be met without those things. But it definitely does make care for your betta fish the easiest it can possibly be. When you're keeping a betta fish in a 5+ gallon tank, you can have a heater, you can have a filter. It takes down the workload of doing a water change a lot more. Your water changes are easier. You don't have to be as concerned about temperature or about pH of your water, because it's affecting less of the water volume, so your fish can handle that stress easier. Water changes don't have to happen as frequently, because you can establish a good nitrogen cycle, and so therefore that beneficial bacteria is handling the bacteria that the nitrates and ammonia that's in your tank better, and cycle it so it's less harmful for your fish. So it definitely is easier that way. You can see your fish move around a little bit more, even though bettas are extremely lazy and, to be honest, don't move a whole lot, especially the ones that you can find at most pet stores. They tend to have very big tails. They get tired really easy, so they don't move a whole lot. But in a bigger tank, they do move more, and so you can see them move. You can get to know their natural habits better, so you can tell when they're sick a lot easier than if you're doing it in a cup or anything like, or in a small pitcher or a small fish bowl that doesn't have a heater or a filter. With that, it's also easier to medicate your fish if you need to, whether that's adding salt to your aquarium or if that's adding different types of medication for different types of diseases. So with that makes it way easier, because the water volume is big enough that generally a lot of fish medication has, like, hey, this is the exact dose you need for that big of a tank. With that, the smaller ones, you do run that drawback of the water volume is so small that it's hard to get precise of how much medication or salts you need to put in there to take care of your fish. So all in all, it is definitely okay to keep your fish in a bowl, in a cup, or go with the most suggested way nowadays, which is a bigger tank with filter and heater. Just know the drawbacks of each and every type of fish tank you're going to be keeping your betta fish in, because it might be more work than you're wanting to put in. And so if you're not willing to put in the work to take care of the fish properly in those conditions, it might be worth upgrading the tank to be a 10-gallon tank, or maybe instead of keeping them in a cup, keep them in that gallon base that you have, and keep a plant or two in there, and then that makes taking care of your fish easier. A lot of fish keeping is just pre-planning, and that's just something you learn as you go. I can go into a fish store and just buy a fish, buy a tank, and everything will work out fine, because I've learned that process of what I need to do to take care of my fish, and I know exactly how to cycle the tank. I know how to take care of the fish. I know how many water changes I need to do. So a lot of rules in fish keeping can be broken if you first learn the basics. So learn the basics about betta fish. They'll help teach you the basics for your other fish, and then after that you can start breaking rules of what everybody else talks about with that experience. But obviously learn the basics first, so you know which rules are able to be broken and changed, so that you can keep your fish happy and healthy.